Feel the heart. Experience the soul. Community Pulse.
Good morning and assalamu alaikum to you, Dr. Faiez, and shukran so much for being here.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Zainab.
A bit of a late start with Tashriq stealing some of our time this morning.
That's fine.
Are you good?
Alhamdulillah, I'm very well.
Excellent. Now, Dr. Faiez, the last conversation we had, we spoke about organizational culture.
Yes, we did. Yes,
and
yes.
it was quite interesting in terms of what we concluded with, and just looking at how I think every institution has a particular culture.
Very much so. I mean, it can't not have a culture. People do things in a certain way, and that's really their culture. Ultimately, sort of simplify things. But ultimately, it's really the consciousness, the collective consciousness of the people in that organization. And you will always come down to the level of the consciousness, or rise to the level of the consciousness of the organization in which you work. So if you come into an organization with, for example, a high level of consciousness, and the organization has a low level of consciousness,
or no level of consciousness,
or they're completely unconscious, then pretty soon you're going to be at that level, because that's how the brain works.
But why is it that we can't influence the institution instead of...
If you're a powerful person, you're a strong person, and you stand your ground, you know, and you're in a company, organization that has a low level of consciousness, and you really fight, you know, for your level to be reached, perhaps you'll be successful. I'm still looking for that person. I'm sure there are people like that who can actually raise the level of consciousness of an organization. But if the leader has a lower level of consciousness than what you have, then it's going to be pretty tough battle, actually. And you're pretty soon going to find yourself out of that organization.
True. But you do find impactful people.
You do. Yes, you do. You do. Influential people.
Yeah.
And slowly they raise the level of consciousness of the organization. It's a tough battle, though. It's, as I said, consciousness is about three things: your mind, your body, and your spirit, basically. And so, in terms of your mind, you know, your thoughts. What's the quality of your thoughts? Do you have a lot of ants, automatic negative thoughts? You know. Or do you have a lot of positive thoughts? And also your quality of your thinking in terms of your critical thinking ability. If you're not critically thinking about things every day, then you know, you're going to be operating at a low level of consciousness with respect to your mind, for example. Then your spirit is your emotions. You know, what is the level of emotional intelligence, for example, emotional fitness. If your leader has a low level of emotional fitness, he's not trustworthy, for example. That's an emotional skill. He's not honest, has no integrity. And you are on the opposite end of the scale in terms of integrity and honesty. You know, it's going to be difficult to influence that person in a meaningful way. You can, but it's a process. And your feelings and so forth. And then your body is your actions. What do you do? What do you say and what do you do? So, certainly I'm sure one person can influence the level of consciousness of an organization, but it's a pretty tough battle,
Yeah, it is. Now, Dr. Faiez, before we get into today's topic, I often think about the discussions that we have on a Thursday morning, and I was thinking early this morning, what is it that informs our thinking? What is it that informs our mindsets? If you could maybe just clarify that for us.
Well, you have to go back to your childhood and maybe even in your mother's womb, basically. It's about programming, okay? So we become programmed. And below the age of 6, from 0 to 6, we don't really think about things because our rational mind is not well developed, okay? So everything we experience and everything we hear is downloaded directly into our subconscious mind, because we're basically in the theta state. Babies sleep a lot, first of all, okay, from 0 to 2. And from 2 to 6, they obviously also sleep, but they are most of the time they're in the theta state, which is a non-thinking state, almost like a hypnotic state. And so everything they experience goes into their subconscious. There's a lot of memories that they hold from that period of their lives. And so we also have experiences in life which gives us memories, and that produces our thoughts, and our beliefs produce our thoughts. And so it's our programming, you know, always the word programming. People don't really like to hear, you know, that they are programmed in a certain way. And if they want to change their lives, whether it's respect to their health or whatever parts of their lives they want to change, they have to reprogram themselves. They have to put in new belief systems, new software, for example. That's basically what your programming is. It's software programs that you're running. It's basically your belief systems. they don't want to hear that. And I mean, it's just a sad fact of life that you have to do this if you want to change. If you don't want to change, and also the willingness to change depends on how much you basically love yourself, the respect you have for yourself. If you don't respect yourself, I mean, people will pay thousands of rands for a flat screen TV, for example, but they won't want to pay the same amount to improve their health and, you know, acquire skills to prevent, you know, illness and disease. They wouldn't want to do that. You see this all the time. Doctor, it's so expensive, you know. But the guy just bought a flat screen TV yesterday, you know.
Yeah, true.
Anyway, that's where we are today, unfortunately. Yeah.
Now, our discussion this morning, tell us a bit more about it.
Well, we were going to continue, you know, to talk about culture, organizational culture. In fact, it can mean life and death. Organizational culture is such a serious matter. It can actually mean the difference between life and death. And what do I mean by this? I'll give you an example. I don't know if you remember 1986.
I was born.
You weren't born yet, eh?
I was born.
I was born also. 7 astronauts died, okay? And then in 2003, was it 2003? I think it was, yeah. Another 7 died. How did they die? Can you remember those 2 accidents?
No.
Okay, 1986, it was the Space Shuttle Challenger disaster, okay? The Space Shuttle Challenger actually blew up shortly after launch. And that was because there was a fault in the O-ring of the solid rocket booster. Okay, this is all technical stuff, okay, which I studied this case. And the Rogers Commission actually, I almost said Professor, President Ronald Reagan at the time, instituted the Rogers Commission to investigate this accident. And they found that the reason why this accident happened was because the culture of NASA was dysfunctional. In other words, part of that culture was that the managers actually violated their own safety rules. They knew that this company that makes the O-ring for the solid rocket booster and designed the solid rocket booster, they knew in 1977 already that in fact this O-ring was faulty. But they really, probably because of various reasons, I don't know what those main reasons were, but they just ignored that fact, and 7 people died. Okay. Then in 2003, they didn't seem to have learned much, you know, in that interim period, because in 2003, something similar happened with the Space Shuttle Columbia, and the Columbia Investigation Board, actually, Accident Investigation Board, found that, again, it was the culture, the history of NASA, the cultural traits of NASA was actually directly responsible for this accident. So another 7 astronauts died. So in fact, 14 died from these 2 accidents. And in fact, the Apollo mission was also another accident where 3 people died, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, so the culture is very important. You know, your mindset, your level of consciousness, you know, your consciousness trifecta, if you work in an organization, is crucial, actually. And that's why leadership is so important. If your leader is psychopathic, for example, has low level of empathy, I mean, he's going to cause a real chaos in that company and in the greater world around that company. Yeah, and we see this all the time, actually. Yeah.
But for me, the question is, how is it that we follow or we are led by leaders who are like that?
Well, that's a very good question, actually. Or why do we follow leaders?
Yeah,
like
or why
that?
do we allow? And why are we okay with a system like this? Is it that we are not able to look beyond the obvious, or is it that we are okay with corruption?
We've just come to accept these things because we're not really following, and always come back to the instruction manual, because you're always told to think. If you're seeing something wrong in your world, in your company that you're working in, and you turn a blind eye and you say, okay, I'm not going to say anything about this because I really need this job. I have to earn my living. Otherwise, if I don't have this job, I'm not going to earn any money and I'm going to die of starvation. Okay. So you turn a blind eye to what you see, these bad things around you. That's actually not being a very good person. You're actually being evil. You know, if inaction also has consequences, not just bad action, which has bad consequences, the law of cause and consequence, the law of cause and effect, but inaction, turning a blind eye to bad things, to negative things that you see in your environment, also has negative consequences. So by turning a blind eye and ignoring the bad things around you, it's going to come back to you also in a negative way. That's just the law. Nobody escapes law. I mean, natural law, God's law is God's law. Nothing and nobody escapes law. So behaving in a way contrary to natural law is not very wise or intelligent, actually. Whether you're a president of a country or a professor or a priest or whatever, or just a pauper or person or a poor person, let me put it that way. So it doesn't matter who you are. If you violate natural law, there's going to be consequences. I mean, we've all felt that. I mean, I'm talking about myself first. We all have this experience, so I can speak about it because I know I'm talking from experience. So there we go. Yeah.
You're listening to Radio 786 100.4 FM, and if you have just joined us, a very warm welcome. The first hour of Community Pulse this morning takes a look at part 2 of organizational culture or cultures, and we are talking to Dr. Faiez Kirsten, joining me live in studio. Now, we've already said at the beginning, I think it was last week, that organizational culture works a lot like people. Every company has its unique personality, like people do, and that the unique personality of an organization is referred to it as its culture. In groups of people who work together, organizational culture is an invisible but powerful force.
Correct. I mean, it's what really drives the organization. The whole behavior that you see of those people.
Or that influences the members of that organization.
That's correct. Yeah, exactly. You will start behaving like the people in an organization when you join that organization. Mirror neurons in your brain and the way your mind works will actually ensure that happens. Okay.
It's as you said last week, Doctor, that it's shared assumptions, views,
shared beliefs, shared feelings, shared values, shared attitudes, and ultimately shared behavior.
Yeah.
How people speak, what they do, all of these things they share. Okay, and so a community culture, for example, is what people also do collectively in the same way. So so you have different kinds of organizations, political, business, sports organizations, but then you also have community culture. So people will do the same thing in the community, for example. They'll all eat kusistas on a Sunday morning, for example. That's the culture. It may not be good for their health if they eat like 10 every day or every Sunday, but that's what they do. That's part of the culture. So culture is what people do collectively together in the same way. Okay, you have subculture where people break away from the culture; they do something slightly differently. Yeah.
Okay, now it is said that there's a few characteristics of organizational culture, and I think that when one enters in an institution or organization, you'll find that they firstly would always want for you to be innovative, isn't it?
That's one dimension of culture. If they have this tendency to innovate, to want to do things differently, bring about new things, that's a dimension of culture. There's various different dimensions which you can measure. I mean, as I said, I did my thesis and I measured different cultures in 2 organizations that came together. So I measured the culture before the merger, and I measured the culture of the new organization after the merger, and it was fascinating too. The results are fascinating.
I'd like to look at how does one basically structure your or how do you work towards success, looking at the culture of an organization and how you can perhaps change certain characteristics of an organization in order to lead that organization into success. But before we continue, we have a caller. Yilavani, assalamu alaikum.
Salam to you, Zainab, and salam to the learned doctor, yes?
Walaikum salam.
I'm a pauper, but I take a great interest in these kinds of topics, You take an organization like CIA. To me personally, their mindset is just to cause havoc in people's countries. And now who is suffering? And that is my main point. People being killed, being deprived of the economy, and people in the process suffering of food shortages and what have you. Now, my point is this, we as Muslims, we many, if you look at these and what if you, especially in this age and time, most of the people that's been killed is Muslims. Now, my point I want to ask is this, and I don't want to cause any animosity amongst us, but surely are we just have to accept this? Are we just have to accept this? Is this understanding that we as Muslims just... Now that is where I got the greatest respect for our learned people, especially our theologians. But I think they got a greater role. They definitely got in this modern 18th time. Because people, like especially in the Middle East, they're going on the vendetta to kill their own people. Who's going to address this? The UN? No, in fact, the UN themselves in fact, the Muslim, it's a Muslim guy that's in the spoken for UN. The kind of utterances it baffles the mind. And now, why I'm to ask this question? Are we just got to accept this? And we, our theologians must come together and try and at least bring alleviation to the sufferings and the killings of the special Muslims. And we can't speak so many things. In fact, if I found a lucrative offer for me, is learn this, and I'm going to do all out effort to try and see this. Why don't we, similarly in this direction, try and save the lives of the people and what did you? Shukran. Am I mad in asking these kinds of questions? Shukran.
Shukran for your contribution. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Dr. Faiez.
Like I said, a part of your consciousness are your belief systems, okay, what you believe. And a lot of these organizations hold what we call satanic beliefs. And I think we did cover the 4 pillars of Satanism. So if you have organizations which operate on satanic beliefs, then they have a culture of death, basically. They like to kill, they like to destroy, okay? And you have a lot of organizations in the world today that basically operate on satanic beliefs. That's part of their culture, that's part of their consciousness, is to kill. Doesn't matter if you're innocent or not innocent, child or adult, they will kill you to achieve their goals, whatever those goals may be. So you mentioned one organization, but they definitely, it's the level of consciousness, their belief systems, and these satanic beliefs are, of course, a huge problem across the world. And it's not just organized. People individually hold these satanic beliefs because they're being programmed with them on a regular basis. So, as I said before, you gotta interrogate your own subconscious to find out, am I a Satanist or not? A lot of people don't realize that they actually are Satanists. They actually don't realize that, and until you actually, take them through a process and show them, that they actually are. And Satanists run governments, they run hospitals, they run universities. You can ask me, I've identified satanic beliefs in people, in top positions in universities. So that's part of the culture. If your culture is one of a satanic culture, an evil culture, then you're going to cause massive havoc across the world. In fact, I read an article on Enron, another company. I don't know if you remember Enron, which went bankrupt, one of the biggest bankruptcies in his U.S. history. And these guys running this company were very evil, So the article was Enron's demise a result of an evil culture or something to that effect. Enron is a very interesting case, looking at it from a business perspective. And the leadership mindset there that caused this chaos. I mean, these guys, and they brought down Arthur Andersen, one of the biggest accounting firms. Basically was destroyed because of Enron. So yes, it's about your consciousness, and the part of your consciousness I'm specifically speaking about now is that belief system. If it's satanic beliefs that your leaders and the people in the company hold, they're going to be really bad for the world, and this is what we're seeing today. Absolutely.
Assalamu alaikum.
Hello, assalamu alaikum, Zainabin.
Wa alaikum
Assalamu
salam.
alaikum, doctor. How are you?
Wa alaikum salam. Alhamdulillah, I'm very well,
I
brother.
won't ask Zainabin how she is because according to her sound, she sounds very good, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah.
I just want to add to the discussion about culture, doctor. Doctor, if we go to the history of the American government, how they destroyed the Indians, how they raped the Indians, and how they flouted the treaties that made with the Indian people. That genocide is not discussed, and that if we look at these journalists that create programs, they never bring up this program of the genocide of the American government against the Sioux, the Indian people here from America. That is how they have control. That is, if one go to that history, one will see how they manipulate, and what they are doing today is exactly the same thing that they did with the Indian people. This culture that they're trying to introduce into our societies, this satanic culture that you are speaking about, they did it with the Indian people. And if we go to that history, believe me, doctor, you'll find out they are doing exactly the same thing by destroying countries, by annihilating the cultures. The first thing they take is your identity. They take that away from you. In fact, what they did to the people in Australia, what do they call themselves in the Aborigines? The black people of Australia. You must read what the American government did to the Indian children. So that is, I hope people can realize. I'm glad this topic is discussed. I've been talking about this for years, but I'm glad it is coming into the open now. And this thing about we are living in the end times, believe me, doctor, is a blatant lie. The end times only Allah Ta'ala knows that. But they are putting that fear already into our minds because they are being found out, you see. All these so-called bankers and these people that call themselves the Illuminati, they have been found out, you see.
Okay, shukran, Brother Ishmael. Shukran so much for your contribution. Shukran wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Dr. Faiez.
Yeah, no, shukran for that, brother. Yeah, no, history is replete with sad, tragic stories, and governments are actually the biggest killers of people across the world. I mean, millions, hundreds of millions have been killed by governments, across the world. That's why a belief in government is really what's called statism. The religion of statism is really a dangerous thing because ultimately it's a sad thing, but governments don't really have the well-being of the people at heart, unfortunately. This is just a fact. We would have had a better world because there's so many governments, running countries around the world. And if they really had everybody's interest at heart, we would have a better world. So, if you just look beyond the obvious, you'd see that, how is it possible if governments had the interest of people at heart, why would they be killing people? It's just a common sense thing, And common sense is a very simple thing. It's knowing the difference between right and wrong, that's common sense.
Yeah.
But what I've found over the years is that common sense is not that common, I really found that out.
Maybe we must change that term, is it? But
I think we should actually.
Let's go to the lines. Radio 786, Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Shukran to the doctor for this program. It's always close to my heart. But I'd like to bring it a bit closer to home. I know that some of the comments were what they've done to other cultures and other communities around. And it's very real, it's true. But what I'd like to bring it home to is what it is presently doing to us here now in the present. And the word insidious comes to mind because so often we walk around and we think we are conscious, but we really are not because we are prone to taking on, we see the successes or the word success and what's been put in our minds in terms of what success means. So we see the successes around and we conduct our lives in the same way because we don't do the exploratory thing in terms of what the deeper underlying issues are. And I'm especially worried about our children with the cultures of all the series that they're watching and all of those things and what they go along with without consciously realizing that it's actually it's warping their characters, it's shaping their personalities and all of that. And before you know it, when you wipe out your eyes, even though you're saying I'm a Muslim and I do this and I'm that, the fact which remains is at the end of the day, it's what you do that decides what you are.
Yeah. Shukran so much for that.
I'm not sure if that talk is that way through properly.
Shukran so much. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. I think that the caller raised a very important point in terms of what we deem is success. And when we do think of material or worldly things as success or getting a job here or there, that being that I'm successful, we're obviously going to do things that in accordance to getting there, whether that be being part of an organization that is not ethical or whatever that is, but it means that we will run after that success. So I think that the real question is, what is success to us? Well,
we're living in what we call Novus Ordo Seclorum, the New World Order. it's the globalist agenda which we discussed, which is a materialistic agenda. The very word itself says secular, new secular or worldly order. And the God of this world is money. Okay, so basically we basically program to worship money, and so we put more value on money than we put on ourselves. So people will do everything in their power to earn money rather than spend 1 hour a day improving their health and wellness, for example. So people don't respect themselves, they don't value themselves as much as what they value money. If you look at the Bitcoin phenomenon right now, everybody wants to jump on the Bitcoin bandwagon, everywhere. But we were going to go into, but I don't want to go off at a tangent now. But there again, you can see how people actually worship money. Not that money is not important; it's very important. I mean, you can't survive in this world without money unless you get off the grid and you basically join the community exchange, which is something we set up about 14 years ago to try and get out of the system in terms of trading. And it's still in existence, and people still use it. But people are worshipping money because they program to do so. As I said, human beings are like computers. We're programmable. We take in information, we process it, and we output it in terms of what we say and what we do, our behavior. And so the guys that control us know exactly how our minds work, so they give us information that makes us do what they want us to do, which is one of the things is to worship money. And that's basically what we do. And there's a whole lot of other evil stuff going on. Not that money is evil, money is just neutral. It's the way we deal with money that makes us evil or not,
Yeah.
But there was many points I wanted to bring up. Again, the brother that phoned in earlier about the theologians, I don't want to go down that road, but, again, look beyond the obvious. It's very obvious if you look beyond the obvious regarding theologians. I don't want to really go down this route, but it's just pretty obvious,
Now, we're receiving quite a number of WhatsApp messages via 0786 10 11 12. One of it reads, what is the best way to influence the children at a young age? Seeing that the media has such a strong influence, how do they adopt new beliefs best? That's one of it. And then we have a question, or rather a statement here. Most companies will always want to ascertain from you if you would fit in with the company culture, good or bad. And if you don't fit in, you would mostly find it really difficult. So money still talks for the person that needs the job. And then, Assalamu alaikum, doctor. It's called globalization. We're all wearing the blue jeans and eating McDonald's, and English being the dominant language. It's all part of a big agenda.
Yes, no, absolutely. Like I said, I've done a lot of research on this agenda, and it's pretty obvious, what's going on, and the WhatsApper is quite right. It's globalization. It's to create one world culture, basically. So if you go to Japan, you'll hear Michael Jackson, and if you go to South America, Chile, you'll see Michael Jackson there also. And if you go to Makkah, you'll probably see him there also. So that's part of creating the one world government, controlling the world through one world one military and creating one culture, which is we are there already. It's not like it's going to happen in the future, but the enslavement and the tyranny, and the entrapment is actually intensifying. It's rapid. It's getting worse and worse every day. But it's subtle in many ways that people don't actually realize how more and more enslaved they're becoming, and that's a testimony to the brilliance of these evil minds that are doing this.
But isn't the saddest thing that we are
we're willingly going to the slaughterhouse. We're willingly, definitely willingly going to quietly into that dark night, basically.
And we're supposed to be the best of people, isn't it?
Well, we should be, but we obviously not. And that's sad.
Now, just a reminder, it's Radio 786 100.4 FM. We continue looking at the organizational cultures and just culture generally, and we're receiving quite a few WhatsApp messages. One of it reads, Assalamu alaikum to everyone in studio. I was always looking for the right program or forum to ask this question. In my opinion, I feel our scholars are not eager to mention the ayah or the verse in the Quran described by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Nabi Isa will return to the dunya to complete his prophethood, and the proof that Allah is one and has no partners. Also, from current world political mayhem in the Middle East, he will point out the truth amongst the three Abrahamic faiths, as he is revered by all these faiths. Maybe the completion of the prophecy is to expose those who are behind the mayhem in the Middle East. We do have a call on the line. If we can just very quickly go there. You're live on air. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to you and your honorable doctor and all your listeners.
Wa alaikum salam.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
In fact, I would like to add, the Quran has made it very clear that the world will always be divided into two, the khabith and the tayyib, the good and the evil. Now, Allah tells us, Allah will not leave those who are seekers of truth, those who are seekers of Allah, those who want to understand how Allah exists. Allah said He will not leave them in the lurch, He will not leave them in the darkness until He sends someone to represent Him. Then Allah will create a new world order. So those who accept Him will be in the good world order, and those who reject or deny Him, they will be in the bad world order. Let's take, for example, the Saudis now, what they are doing. They are described as Dajjal as well because they are liars, they are deceivers, and though they are allies with the West, but they are shaitans themselves. When we try to understand the word shaitan actually applies to the so-called Muslims as well. Whenever we read shaitan, we think it is the non-Muslims. But shaitan means people that are rebellious, people that do not want to understand reason. Now, someone did just mention about the coming of Isa. I'm going to give him the news. The Quran is very clear. Nabi Isa ﷺ died a natural death. So the Isa Nabi Muhammad ﷺ gave the glad tidings to come in the future will be someone who will be giving the title of Isa, because his mission will be exactly like the mission of Nabi Isa, to come and bring the people under unity and to revive their religion so they become godly. Now, as long as people become ungodly, then Allah says, Allah will replace you with another people, and they won't be like you. So, inshallah, this is how the Saudis now, inshallah, they will be replaced. In fact, their days are numbered. Even America's days are numbered. In fact, all big powers' days are numbered. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did say, but when the Messiah or the Mahdi comes, the sun will rise from the west. Now, the sun rising from the west meaning what? Inshallah, with the efforts of this Jama'ah that Allah has established, when these people embrace Islam and they see the true light of Islam, it is symbolic. It means they will understand Islam as it should be understood, and they will demonstrate Islam as it should be understood. There's nothing wrong with any systems, but all systems need to be reformed for the benefit of humanity. But people have monopolized religion and politics to keep people dumb and to exploit the stupidity of the people.
Shukran.
And this is unfortunately that you are faced with, not only among the politicians, even among the religious people.
Shukran wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dr. Faiez, we have a limited time, but we still haven't managed to answer some of the questions, especially the one on what is the best way to influence our children at this young age, seeing that media has such a strong influence, and how do they adopt to new beliefs?
Yes. The point the brother made was we impertinent is that the agenda is to dumb people down. I mean, in various ways. The food you eat, the water you drink, the air you breathe. They're using all these different methods to basically dumb people down, control their mind, which is absolutely true. Your schooling system, your education system dumbs kids down. And even when you go to coming out of university, most university students can't really think critically. So that is really true what's happening. People really need to take cognizance of the fact that they're being dumbed down. I mean, we see it. I see it around me all the time. It's actually quite scary sometimes. But how you see a kid during the early years, that's what we call the kids' formative years, where the parents have a massive impact on the child's future, basically, how they interact with it, how they format the kid, because it's their formative years, basically. And if the parents are dysfunctional, then the kid has really no hope, because he's starting out with a dysfunctional formatting, let's put it that way, okay? So the parents have to basically work on themselves. If they're going to bring a kid into the world, then they really need to work on themselves first, because they're going to format that kid in a way that's going to be very detrimental to the child's well-being going forward. And then the culture that the child grows up in. Again, if you're eating kusistas every Sunday, like I did, that's part of the culture. Now the kid takes that as normal because everybody did that. That's what was downloaded into his system, into his mind. And so for him, going forward, he's going to be eating, bad food, for example, and taking it as normal, which we find ourselves in today. And that's why the whole world, in fact, 20% of people die across the world every year. Why, Zainab? From the food they eat. Poor nutrition, bad nutrition. Let me put it that way, not poor, but bad diets. 20% of the global population die from the food they eat. That's a lot of people. Okay, why are they eating the food? Why are they killing themselves? Because they thought it was just normal to eat food. It wasn't seen as bad food. It was seen as food. I mean, whatever they've been eating for like 40, 50 years is like taken as normal. Then the beliefs that's downloaded into the kid's mind, that's the software programs, these dogmatic beliefs, which make no sense in many ways, okay? But the kid takes it as normal, and he'll even kill other people for his own beliefs because that's what he takes to be the truth. So you got to deal with all these things. How do you format your kid as a parent? What kind of culture is the child growing up in? And then also the kind of beliefs that you put into the child's head, in school and also from the parents and so forth. All of these things are going to put out a child in that world, an adult in that world, that's either going to contribute positively to the world or is going to contribute negatively to the world. And I would argue that, in fact, most of us are contributing negatively to the world every day. Most of humanity is contributing in a negative way to the world, and that is why the world is the way it is today. And unless we start reprogramming ourselves, I mean, I don't know how many times I've said this, most people are not interested in that. That's the sad part. That's the tragic part. I mean, I even offer stuff for free sometimes, and people don't accept it. All the work I've done, in terms of my programs, in terms of my audios that I actually develop, which done amazing stuff for me, a lot of people are just not interested. Some people are interested, but a lot of people are not interested. That's because people don't respect themselves. You see, they have the self-loathing because of the trauma they've experienced in their lives. They're carrying a lot of emotional trauma, and they haven't cleared that from their system. So they're sitting in a state of brain imbalance. They don't feel good about themselves, so they don't respect themselves. And so they will do things that would not benefit themselves, even if you offer it to them for free.
We have a caller. Assalamu alaikum, Lavan A.
Wa alaikum salam, Titi Zainab, everyone.
Alaikum salam.
Titi Zainab, I'm the person that sent a message about the campaign for having 1 million non-Muslims accepting the kalima. I would like to elaborate on that. Maybe when you find a slot for me, and maybe we can touch on it. It does make a whole lot of sense, and it will make a difference. So if maybe sometime you can maybe have the doctor also on the program, and more than pleased to share my view and the idea as to how to go about this.
Inshallah.
Shukran.
Shukran so much. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. We also have a few last WhatsApp messages. Assalamu alaikum. Food for the soul is worshipping Allah, and success is from our Creator. Should share with our kids and practice deen from a young age. And then one last question to you, Dr. Faiez. How do we reprogram ourselves?
I think I went through that in one of the programs a while back. You got to acquire information. You got to process that information. I've developed edu-empowerment programs to help people process that information in a meaningful way. Tools that I've developed. And then you develop knowledge and beliefs, proper beliefs, and you act on that, which is wisdom, okay? And so it's a process in reprogramming yourself. Okay, you got to be very careful of disinformation, deliberate false information, and misinformation, which is mistaken false information. But in both cases, it's false information. So you got to be very careful when you're doing your research and when you're going through the reprogramming process to make sure that you're taking in the right information. Because as I said, input, processing, output. That's the nature of a human being, is to be programmable. The condition of humanity is terrible. We're in a terrible condition. So we call the human condition, because our programming is so bad. And so the nature of us is to be programmable, and so we must then take advantage of this fact that we're programmable, because we're told by Allah that in fact He won't change our condition if we don't change our inner selves, our inner programming, you see. And we're just basically ignoring that instruction, willfully ignoring it, and thinking that everything's going to be hunky-dory just by ignoring that instruction. It doesn't work like that. You have to take action to reprogram yourself. I don't know how much more to say it. It's difficult, but anyway.
Dr. Faiez, we have quite a number of WhatsApp messages asking for how to get in contact with you. Just for those who are interested, if you can just leave your number.
Yeah, it's 078-416-2673. 078-416-2673. Send me an SMS or send an email to faiez@brainscience.co.za. Faiez at brainscience1word.co.za. And if you'd like to join the institute, then I will send you some information in this regard. Yeah.
Inshallah. Dr. Faiez, to you, shukran so much for your time and your insights. May Allah reward you, inshallah, and may we take heed indeed.
Afwan, inshallah.
Do stay tuned to Radio 786 on 100.4 FM as Community Pulse continues. Firstly, we take a short break, and then, of course, the news at 10.